Hey, you're here. And I'm here too. So you know what that means? This is another episode of Frightfully Wondrous. Today we're going to talk about truth and how it relates to the big conversations we're having and what it actually is. So let's take a step back and storytell a little bit. I want you to imagine a glass of milk. Just, a normal glass of milk. Now you're going to take that glass of milk and imagine it in space. So it's floating, just in space, this glass of milk. Now remove the glass. So it's just this orb of milk. There's a shape held of milk and it's just floating in space. Now for a second, consider that milk and believe it to be truth itself. Okay. Now, most people as we go around our lives have a choice as to whether or not to ever see that truth. Some people fall flat on their face and they look up and there it is. There's this truth. Some people live their whole lives and never wonder what's inside of it, if there is an inside, what it tastes like, what it smells like, how to hold it, what's the best way to understand it. And some people can think of nothing else. Now, in order to understand this truth, we do different things. We build ladders to skies, we build rocket ships, we pass on secrets from one generation of grandmothers to a new generation of women who might be. And we inspect and we study and we learn these truths. All these different things, because every single time we impose our own experiences on understanding, we change the form of truth. So when someone takes truth and puts it in a shiny goblet, or takes it and puts it in a tiny clay cup, or takes it and puts it in a tin bottle, it's going to taste different. It's going to look different. It's going to be shaped differently. But it's all the same truth. In fact, it's the same truth that drips on the sky and falls on you when you're flat on your back. It's the same truth that stands over you and protects you from whatever's up there when you're standing tall. It's the same truth that slips through the fingers of a hobo and the same truth that sits on the table of a king. It is truth. How you perceive it and the containers that we hold it in, that's you. Now, keeping that story in mind, this plays into every conversation that pretty much anyone could ever have. When you're talking about any of the big concepts, which is what we talk about here every Thursday, subscribe. Whenever you do that, you have to consider the possibility that you are perceiving a truth that is different than someone else's truth. But in fact, the exact same truth. Somewhere behind it all is the actuality. So when you have these conversations, the goal is not to stay at the glossed over level, but to get behind the cause of the cause of the cause. Two people can see a circumstance and see something entirely different. Two people can experience a circumstance and take from it entirely different ideas. When something happens, what actually happened? What result did we actually see, and did we actually measure, and how did we measure those, and how did the measurements we choose to use reflect our own biases? Truth is flexible, but in fact, it is the same truth, which is why we have these conversations, because we're working towards getting to a point, not necessarily where we understand what it is to drink the milk from the king's table or what it is to have it slip through our fingers, but to understand how they're understanding it. Because in our own individual bias, that's where our stories meet. The interest is not in the truth, although there is an interest to be had there, but in conversations, the interest is in how we perceive the world. And what made us perceive the world like that? All of these things lead up to our own biases and our own gifts and our own reflections of our own life and things that happened to us and how we perceived those things happening to us, and more importantly, how we reacted to the things that happened to us. Truth is space milk. And if you remember that, it's a little easier to come to a common ground when having these important conversations. So whenever things get too out of hand, when you start a conversation that gets a little too fiery, just take a deep breath and look up and imagine a cup filled with milk. Then remove the cup and consider what tools you use to get to that and how you defined yourself and your experiences as the true discovering of that truth. And consider the possibility that to this other person who climbed the ladder, they consider the truth they found equally valid to the truth you found in your rocket ship. because they searched for it, and they found it, and they held it in their hands, and they smelled it, and they tasted it. They know their truth. But in fact, they only know the truth that they were meant to discover. Hopefully here we discover a few more truths together. Hopefully we get to understand how you perceive truth. And hopefully we all get to learn a little bit more about our own biases so that we can expand and do some better things. So I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, and I hope to see you next week when we delve into some deeper concepts. So keep in touch. Subscribe, follow all the links, click all the buttons. I will see you soon. I promise I won't do this voice. Mwah! Have a great day, you guys.